Good evening, Miss, and to anyone that is watching. My name is Conan, and this will be my CCA Maths video presentation of the 3rd of December 2021. Now, for this particular CCA, my class was given the task to draw a logo, or basically a design in Desmos using a few sets of functions. So, in this video presentation, I will be covering off the key function that I have used throughout creating my logos, what I use them for, and what are their restrictions. So, without further ado, we can begin. Now, the particular logo that I've created represents as a skeleton with markings as well as horns with targets on his back. Uh, with me, or with my hobby being playing games, is to kill time, or basically just to escape reality for once in a while, I figured that it will make something that could, well, represents one of the most generic stereotypes of game, that is to be shooting a monster in the head. Now, following the given link below the logo, this will take us to Desmos, and to our left will show just about every single equation that I have used throughout creating this logo. This also includes a few functions that I will not be, well, saying or basically presenting in the CCA, but they are there and they are listed into the summary for the logo creation. Now, this overall have a total equation of let's see, 31. Some of them are also recurring because of restriction rules. So that should be around like either 28 till 31. That is the total number of functions that I put in order to create such logo. Now, what are the 5 key functions that I have used to create such logo? Those functions are the polynomial function with examples following it, the exponential function, the logarithmic function, the trigonometric function, and the rational function, like so. So, tackling to the first key function, and that shall be polynomial function. For the polynomial function, I use equations such as so, as you can see from the screen. And that follows the restriction when y is greater than 1 and x to be greater than -1 but less than 1. Now, I use the polynomial function for the nose, or basically the nose bone of the skull. And just a moment. Here you can see basically the logo again, but I will put a circle, like a green circle, around the nose. That is representing to that polynomial function. After it has been restricted, it will resemble similar to that of a nose bone. Or, well, I say similar but not precisely. So it may not be perfect, but at least it can fit into the rule. Now, the next key function that we'll be covering is the exponential function. Now, for the exponential function, I shall be writing down 4, and that is as so. Now, you can see that all 4 of the exponential function, I have labeled them in a square bracket with following numbers. I will be referring to the respective functions to the respective numbers inside the square bracket, as to make things a bit more easier and a bit more simpler to say. So, the restriction for number 1, that shall be x is greater than 3.458 but less than 4.667. Number 2, the restriction shall be x greater than -4.667 but less than 3.458. Number 3's restriction shall be x is to be greater than 2.5 but less than 4.663. And number 4's restriction shall be x to be greater than -4.663 but less than -2.5. Now, I use the exponential functions from number 1 to number 4 to represent, or basically to draw out, the inner and the outer curve of the horns that you see on the logo. Now, Following back from the link that is provided again, the exponential function we can find at equation number 17 to equation number 20. Sorry. Now, if you were to untick this, or basically just to like erase the lines from the logo itself, you can see on how it affects the drawing by removing some of the particular lines that it's covering. So if we were to remove 17 and 18, we would remove the outer curve of the horn for both the left side and the right side. Now if we were to remove number 19 and number 20, we were to remove the inner curve for both the left side and the right side of the horn, like so. Now, exponentials we have already covered, and now we can simply move on to the logarithmic function. For the logarithmic function, I do as so, that I still will also be representing them with numbers, as I will be using multiple, well, more than one at least. So the restriction for number 1 follows as x to be greater than negative 1.255 but less than 2.267, and number 2's restriction shall be x to be greater than negative 2.267 but less than 1.255. I use the logarithmic function in the logo as the markings on the forehead of the skull. To make things a bit more clear, we could just follow the link again, as so. And that should lead us to equation number 21 and 22. Now, if we were to remove equation 21, or basically the line that represents 21, you can see from the logo itself that the line that basically creates an X at the forehead is going to be missing. And this particular line that is missing is the one that is touching the left eye socket of the skeleton. But when we remove 22, that will be the marking that is touching the right side eye socket of the skeleton. Together, they basically make a X mark on top of the skeleton's forehead with a bit of curve. Now, we can now move on from logarithmic into the trigonometric function. Now, the trigonometric function, I will be only using one, and that is to be as so, or as you can see from the equation in front of you. Now, the restriction that is applied will be x to be greater than negative 2.7, while less than 2.7 itself. Now, this function I particularly use to draw out the jawline, or basically the chin of the skull. Now, from the picture again that I have circled out from the green line, is basically going to be the curve from the cosine graph that is supposed to appear. But I restricted it to only about the size so that it can match to jawline. Also, it is the 3 lines in there represents the jaw. This is not the jawline. Now, moving on to the last function, and that should be rational function. In here we have 2. That is as so for number 1 and number 2. But for this particular rational function, I shall be using 2 restrictions for each number. So the first restriction for number 1 is x to be greater than negative 2.279 but less than negative 2.157. And the second restriction shall follow as x to be greater than negative 3.314 but less than 2.437. The first restriction for number 2 shall look like as x to be greater than 2.157 but less than 2.279, and the second restriction shall follow as x to be greater than 2.437 but less than 3.314. Okay, before we continue, I would like to make a disclosure is that my recording application cuts out at the 10-minute mark, so I would basically step a few steps back in order for us to catch up or continue where we left off. So if my voice will be sound choppy, or if something doesn't seem right, then I'm sorry, you need to forgive me on that one. So, rational functions, on what I use them for. For the rational functions, I use them for the markings that passes through the eye sockets on the skull at the logo. So to explain this to be a bit clearer, we can just follow the link that has been given to us again. And that will lead us to equation number 11 till 14. Now, you won't notice that the equation from 11 and 12 and 13 and 14 respectively are basically the same equation. The reason why I draw them twice, or basically put them in the calculation twice, is that they have different restrictions that I need in order for me to create such markings. I can't put this two restrictions for x at the same time or the same equation that have already had a restriction before, so I need to create a new one. Now, if we were to remove the number 11 and 12, you can see that the markings at the right side of the eye socket of the skeleton will disappear. Now this will simply just to be added again, like so. But when we remove number 13 and 14, I remove the top side and the bottom side of the markings at the left side eye socket of the skeleton. Now, that should conclude all the key functions that I shall cover in this CCA video presentation. The rest of the function for this logo I have put into the CCA logo summary, or basically the summary to do all this. Now, this concludes my CCA video presentation of 3rd of December 2021. Thank you for listening, and I apologize for any mistakes, calculations, or mishaps that I have created throughout this video. Thank you.